This is your Friday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Plenty of stuff to get to today. Vikings made a lot of interesting decisions. Maybe that's a euphemism I will use for right now in the first round of the NFL draft on Thursday, trading down 20 spots to the very last pick of the first round before selecting Lewis Cine, safety from Georgia. We got a lot of thoughts on that. You'll hear from General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah as well along those lines, and also a lot of comments from readers, listeners on Twitter. I asked for their opinion of the move. Not a lot of overwhelmingly positive sentiments about how the night went, even if people generally agree that Lewis Cine could be a very good player for this team. Twins have won 7 games in a row now after that 4-8 start. Another very breezy almost win over the Tigers 7-1 on Thursday. So they are 11-8 now after that 4-8 start. Really brought themselves out of that early hole and look awfully good right now. And the Wild, a big overtime win against Calgary Thursday night, getting them on the precipice of home ice in that first round playoff series against St. Louis. All they need now is a point in tonight's game against Colorado or to have St. Louis lose in regulation against Vegas. So those teams are tied. Actually, the Wild 2 clear of St. Louis now with that one final game remaining tonight. So we'll see how that goes. And Chris Hine, Timberwolves beat writer, will join me to set up big Game 6, Wolves against Memphis on Friday night at Target Center. So my goodness, there is plenty of stuff going on in local sports. If those are the traditional Big Four men's pro sports, all of them are hopping right now. But first, what did I miss? Got to get to the draft right at the jump. Like I said, Vikings moving back 20 spots. And, I read Ben Gessling's story from the night suggesting that, the trade value charts that you look at, the Vikings traded number 12 and number 46, and they got 32, 34, and 66. So the end of the first round, very early part of the second round, very early part of the third round. The draft charts, kind of divided on whether that was fair value for what they gave up or not. It feels like a lot to give up. It felt like 12 is if not a super premium pick, was a pretty elevated pick where you've got your chance at a lot of different difference makers. The guy I really like, Jameson Williams, ends up going in that spot after that trade to the Lions, and we're gonna, we will relitigate this trade for years to come. The guys that they were, that they could have had at number 12, how did their careers pan out versus how did Lewis Cine work out? How did these other picks they got end up working out? So my overall take on a move like this is when you do something like this, you had better be right? Because easy thing, and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said this, the easy thing would have been to just stay at 12, and there's a thought, he said, to just do that, right? Stay at 12, take Williams, take Kyle Hamilton, the safety that everybody loved, take, one of those edge rushers that could impact the passing, the pass rush in a meaningful way next season. But instead, you get to this point where you're stockpiling, top 100 picks, which is generally where draft analysts see the talent in a draft being, there's a cap at that point in a lot of years. And, in fairness, going into this season, there was a thought that maybe this draft wasn't super top heavy, but that there was a lot of depth in it. So that part of it makes sense. It just looks at it like the eye test of the trade. When you look at it, you're like, that it just feels like they could have gotten more for that number 12 pick. And, we're going to have to see as time goes on, but the gut instinct was what are they thinking, right? What are they thinking? Why do that? Why get so cute? Why do you feel the need to make a deal like that when you've got a number 12 pick, when you've got a lot of great players sitting right there. But let's hear first, before we get to some readers, listeners, and such, let's hear first from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah as he talked through the process of, talking to Lewis Cine and what he thought of Lewis Cine as a player that they ultimately decided to pick him after trading down.
Just up here, incredibly excited about what we just did. We added somebody. We talk about our culture, the pillars of our culture: smart, tough, competitive, and I think we added somebody who's off the charts in all three. Incredibly dynamic player, adds range all over the field in the pass and in both phases really. Knows the defense inside and out. Just an incredible player. He was one of our targets really starting in the teens, and you're kind of sweating it out there as it goes on. And this was a great outcome for us. We looked at our situation at 12, and we kind of looked at our different scenarios if we picked a certain player versus sort of the trade back and what we could get with the trade back, and we liked our options, and this was one of our good options. So we're excited that this came to fruition. Again, it was a cool moment. You get to call somebody, and I guess he didn't know. He introduced us. I said, "Hi, I'm Kwesi," and he still didn't really get it. I'm the general manager of the Vikings. He still didn't really get it. And I said, "Hey, we're a building full of dream chasers. You want to come chase dreams with us?" And he just like, "Why?" He starts yelling. So that was a great moment, something I'll never forget for the rest of my life.
Now, if building full of dream chasers isn't somebody's fantasy football team in 2022, I'm going to be very disappointed because that feels like a natural tie-in to that. And like I said, Vikings fans, by and large, did not love this move. I'm going to play a few. I'm going to read a few of the best comments I got. I asked for how people felt about this trade. Got a lot of replies, some of them kind of along the same lines. I'm not going to read every single one, but here's a sampling of what I got. At Looney Viking says, seems to me like a skittish new GM punting on his first draft night and getting a mediocre reward. But it's not like I'm an expert. He knows more than I do. And that's fair. We got to remember that. I mean, these guys, we look at it, we read a few mock drafts, we maybe study, we look at a little bit of film, things like that. We formulate opinions. But these guys, this is their full-time job. More than a full-time job. They know they've got to get this right. They know they need to, believe in what they're doing, believe in their process, and they certainly do believe in their process. So, there is that element to it. Derek Karen says, I like the pick, but I still hate the trade, though. And I think that was echoed by a few different people in terms of how they felt about this. You can like Lewis Cine as a player. You can think he fits well into the defense and still think, why did you trade down? And that was a sentiment echoed by a few different players. At Fats Minnesota says, I feel like going into this draft, they were determined to trade down unless the perfect guy fell to them, and then the market to trade down didn't materialize like they thought it would, but they traded down anyway. Cine is almost beside the point. They sold too low on pick 12. That's pretty fair. Kind of how I feel about this too, that they maybe should have gotten more for this number 12 pick. Scott says, "Skull, LOL." Ouch. Yeah, there's an element to that. I don't feel like the Vikings, will grade out great compared to the rest of the league. But you know what? Again, drafts are the kinds of things where we'll never know for years, right? We won't know about this for a long time unless something weird happens and we all of a sudden gain some sort of great clarity on this draft sooner than later. But these things usually take a lot of time to play out, and we won't really know the full scope of this for a long time. PJ Flex Ego says, apparently Kwesi likes to drink red wine on draft night. Ooh, it seems like a Mike Zimmer callback there. Would have loved to have been in the building, by the way, if Zimmer was still the head coach and they traded down 20 picks. Scott Wilcox says, if the Vikings draft Malik Willis at 34, all is forgiven. Willis, the quarterback from Liberty. I don't think that's going to happen, guys, by the way. They are committed to Kirk Cousins for the medium term at least, but I could be wrong. It says, otherwise, I feel that I'm Charlie Brown, promised a new kickoff, then feeling set up because Kwesi's just Lucy, yanking the new ball away. Now, a few people did really like the pick. Mitchell Lock says, great pick, another Harrison Smith, but faster. Other people saying they like the pick, but they still don't understand the trade. Other people saying they had their minds made up to make the trade. So it's just kind of a smattering of, just a little bit of disappointment and a little bit of like, what exactly were they doing? Were they trying to be the smartest guys in the room and then, kind of got stuck in this position, or was this really the smart pick that they hope it was? I don't know. Like I said, time on this will really tell. We don't know. I mean, I like Lewis Cine's measurables. I like what he could bring to this defense. They certainly seem to be valuing safety more than the previous regime. Maybe this is a Harrison Smith replacement at a certain point, but right now, putting those two guys on the backside of the defense will be a good thing. But again, when you make a trade like this, when you give up a lot of draft equity in the first round to add draft depth, you need to be right. Your process needs to be right. Your belief in the draft needs to be right. Your algorithm, however Kwesi Adofo-Mensah wants to describe it, needs to be correct, because the easy, smart thing to do in some cases is just to stay where you are and take a very good player at number 12. So a lot is riding on this. I know they have a lot of depth to make up because of some deficiencies in past drafts from predecessor Rick Spielman. But whether they got enough value for that number 12 pick is going to be a question that I think we will need to evaluate over the years. And right now, I just don't feel like they did, even if I think Lewis Cine is a good player.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is playday.
Really happy to have Chris Hine join Daily Delivery. Of course, covering the Timberwolves for the Star Tribune has been busy. Hopefully you've been reading a lot of his coverage of the Wolves, this series with Memphis that has been very good, very memorable in a lot of ways. I'd say to a certain degree, this has been one of, if not the best opening round series in the whole league, just with the back and forth nature of it. Wolves fans might disagree at this point because Memphis is up 3-2, but it has not lacked drama, has it, Chris Hine?
It has not. Drama on both sides, both good and terrible basketball at times being played in this series. I think everybody kind of looked at these matchups coming in and said this had the potential to be the most fun first round series, and I think it's more than lived up to that billing for sure.
Now, you wrote before Game 5 that one statistic or one factor in the game might determine that game, and you looked awfully smart when Memphis grabbed 18 offensive rebounds and 7 of them alone by Brandon Clark in the fourth quarter of that game that really turned that double-digit Wolves lead into a heartbreaking loss. Now, I wanted to ask you, though, I mean, they've been talking about this all season. They've been talking about, rebounding better. They've not been a good defensive rebounding team. I think they finished third from the bottom in the league this year in terms of defensive rebounding percentage, and Memphis is very good at it. Aside from put a body on a body and try harder, are there different tactical things they can do, different lineups they can deploy that wouldn't take away from what they want to do, otherwise defensively or even offensively?
It's an interesting question. First off, thank you for stroking my ego by saying I look really smart in Game 5. If we could do that more on this podcast, that'd be great. But I don't know about different lineups. It's hard to say. The one thing that I will say is I think more of Memphis's rebounding success and the Timberwolves' rebounding failure than I think I had anticipated hinges on how they defend Morant. So the fourth quarter, Brandon Clark goes nuts. Morant goes nuts because Morant was starting to really beat the defense a lot. And so that shifts the defense around. It shifts bodies inside. And a guy like Brandon Clark can then kind of shift around himself and get in pretty prime rebounding position when the defense is so concentrated on John Morant. If they're able to keep him more out of the paint, then you have more of a kind of a traditional setup on defense. nothing is as scrambled as it is. And you're able to get kind of box out guys in good position. You're not scrambling to make up for it. They do a lot of sandwich box outs with two smaller guys on a bigger guy, kind of just, try to get two guys on one guy. But I don't know about lineup combinations specifically for rebounding. I think you might get into trouble elsewhere with that. So I think that's the big thing. It starts with their defense on Morant more than anything else. It seems like.
Doesn't sound like you're ready to scratch my Greg Monroe itch, does it?
No, I'm not. I'm not sure he's quite the answer because I just don't see it.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't think he was. I didn't think he was the answer. And what you said about John Morant is interesting because you're right. That fourth quarter, was a lot of that was probably Patrick Beverley foul trouble, then eventually fouling out of that game because he's been one of the primary people on John Morant in this series and has done a pretty good job on him. But when he was not in the game for a lot of that time, John Morant, you're right, was getting to the basket more, and that does shift bodies around. That said, Anthony Edwards in that game played 35 minutes and did not grab a single defensive rebound, had one offensive rebound in the game, didn't have an assist or a steal or a block either. And I know we're asking a lot of someone who can't even legally buy a beer yet, but he is one of the most important players on the team. Do you get the sense that they want more on that end from him, especially on the rebounding effort?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because we just got done with media availability as we record this, and Ant just got done saying, I will read the quote. I asked him about rebounding today, and he said, quote, "I will go rebound the ball. You will see a lot of that tomorrow. I will have a lot of rebounds at the end of the game. I promise you that. Win, lose, or draw, I will have a lot of rebounds." So I think he's very cognizant of how his rebounding was in Game 5. So I think if there's any prop bets out there where you might be able to get that a little low, or maybe you don't believe in him. Maybe you don't believe he's going to get a lot of rebounds, and maybe you want to go under. But it sounds like it might be a good time to go over on Ant's rebounds tomorrow.
He's too big and too athletic to not get rebounds. Part of it probably is how their system is designed, and they want to get out and run. And he's certainly one of the guys they want out in a position to get in the open floor quickly. But when you're just getting killed on the offensive glass like they were, especially in that fourth quarter, it is kind of an all hands on deck situation. And I was surprised when I looked at the stat sheet at the end and just didn't see anything on the defensive rebounding side next to his name. Now, he was pretty hard on himself after that Game 5, was honest, saying, I gambled. It was a dumb mistake. Can't do anything about it in terms of that last play with John Morant. I don't sense that he's the kind of guy that's going to have his confidence shaken, but where do you sense his head's at or everybody else's head's at after Game 5, now having had a chance to digest that for a day or two?
As usual, they seem pretty confident in themselves, and I think that's both a blessing and a curse.
Sure.
I think it's a blessing in the sense that it can allow them to move on quickly from what otherwise might be a lingering defeat. So, Malik Beasley today saying that they feel the series should be 4-1 and they should be resting just like Golden State. Ant is always confident. He's definitely not shaken or anything like that. He never is. But I think that confidence can sometimes turn into hubris, especially late in games, as we saw in Game 3 and Game 5, where they sometimes feel like they can coast, I think, to a win, or they get away from what they did to build some of these leads. So I still think they're very confident. I have no feel for how Game 6 is going to go, none at all. And yeah, I don't know. I'm very prepared to be booking a terrible travel itinerary for Saturday morning and potentially on Monday, but I just don't know where this is going to go from here.
Yeah, I thought they're going to get their doors blown off in Game 4, and then they played probably their best overall game of the series, at least in terms of relative to Memphis playing pretty well in that game, I thought, too. And they were just the better team for 48 minutes that night. So I don't know what to expect in this game. It does have the feel of a series that could go 7 games just because of how evenly matched they are, because this game is at Target Center. But you're right. I don't know exactly how it's going to go. I do know it won't go in their favor if they don't get better shots in the fourth quarter if this is a close game. This has been a thing in games 3 and 5, not just the offensive rebounding, but the offensive execution down the stretch, getting a lot of isolation ball, long jump shots late in the clock, just not really flowing the way they need to. I mean, what is that part by design? Is that part by the nature of their players because they do have a lot of guys who can do that? Or what do they want to be their late game offensive identity, I guess?
Good question. And feels like it's still a work in progress in game 88 as this is going to be coming up here. So Chris Finch talked about it today where it's like, look, guys are making moves, dribbling, and with the end goal of getting the best shot for themselves. Whereas for the other maybe 46, 44 minutes of a game, the end goal is, you drive or you do things to get shots, not just for yourself, but for everybody else that's on the floor. And so that objective has changed when they get into this ISO ball, hero ball method. And it diverts from what they want their offense to look like normally. So that is the focus, I think, is not so much Ant or D'Lo or Carl using these opportunities to get shots for themselves in the last 5 minutes of the game, but instead getting shots for everybody else that's on the floor. So I think that is, when you have that shift in mindset, maybe the rest of it can fall into place. That seems to be the way you should think about that. But at the same time, these guys want the ball in their hands in crunch time. They want to be the ones taking the shots. And then, we were talking about in the press room today, and then, media might criticize them for not wanting to take the big shots in situations like that.
Sure.
So, how do you walk that line of using your ability to get your teammates open shots, but also you're the best players and traditionally you should be taking those big shots. I think they need to err more on the side of just get open shots for whoever it is, because that's when your offense is working best.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think they will, make or miss when the shot is open. You can at least justify it a little bit more than kind of those contested late shot clock shots. Chris Hine, final thought for you entering game 6 on Friday. We've identified a couple things here in terms of offensive rebounding, in terms of late game execution, but this series has had so many twists and turns already. I mean, we started with Karl-Anthony Towns, being kind of a no-show in game 2, and then having some more struggles along the way. We've seen, him bounce back. We've seen Anthony Edwards struggle a little bit here lately with some things. We've had, Memphis's players kind of up and down. Steven Adams was the starter at the beginning of the series. Now he's barely touching the court. As you think about the evolution of this series and Jordan McLaughlin suddenly being a key member of this rotation and playing crunch time minutes, anything that you can identify as, X factors or things that you would look for in game 6 that will tell the story beyond the ones that we've already mentioned here?
I think both teams have players that they want to get going. I think for the Wolves, Malik Beasley has been, after a strong start to the series, has been very quiet. So, I think he could be an X factor in a home environment tomorrow night. And I think, we talk a lot about Karl-Anthony Towns' foul trouble, but if Jaren Jackson Jr. has a game where he stays out of foul trouble, what does that look like for Memphis? So we haven't really seen that in this series with him, except for maybe game 2 when Memphis rolled to a win. So those would be kind of my two guys. Does Jaren Jackson play a smart game? Does Malik Beasley have a night like he had in the second half of the season? So many dynamics at play, so many different things that can happen. Like you said, I have no feel for what's going to happen on Friday night. None at all.
That's what makes it fun, though. This has been an extremely fun, entertaining series. I mean, when you legitimately don't know what's going to happen, and these are two teams with not a lot of playoff experience. I think we've seen them play tight at times, both of them. I think they've, had some execution issues at different times, but it has not lacked for tension and entertainment value, and that is really all you can ask for.
That's absolutely right. And whoever wins the series is probably going to get shellacked by Golden State anyway. So, what difference does it really make in the end?
I've got Warriors Bucks in my final. I don't know about you, but that was my pre-playoffs pick. Although I'm regretting Boston a little bit at this point.
I still think Boston can get through. No Middleton for Milwaukee. Yeah, they got a shot.
Yeah, we'll see. Chris Hine, good stuff. Read Chris Hine's work, Star Tribune, startribune.com from Friday's game and beyond. And Chris, we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, Mike.
Chris will, of course, be there tonight when the Wolves play the Grizzlies, Game 6 at Target Center. Will he be going back to Memphis another time, another early morning flight probably to get there Saturday, get settled in, get ready for Game 7? We will find out about that tonight. I don't know. Like both of us said, it's hard to predict what's going to happen in this game. I think the Wolves have been a resilient team all year, but do they have one more of those kind of bounce back efforts in them, or is this where Memphis, the higher seed, predictably the better team going in, puts them away? I don't know. I'm leaning towards this one going 7 because it just feels like that's the way this series should go based on how back and forth it's been, but they need to find a way to close out games better than they have been, or their season is going to end tonight. The Wild season is not ending tonight, but their regular season is ending tonight. Playoffs start Monday, inching ever so close to having home ice in that first round series against St. Louis. Big win over Calgary in overtime on Thursday night. And who else? Kirill Kaprizov with the overtime winner. A beauty at that. 3-2 over Calgary in that game. Notable in this game, Cam Talbot got the nod in goal, made 31 saves on 33 shots, 3-2 win. I'm imagining it's got to be Marc-Andre Fleury tonight. You wouldn't play Cam Talbot in back-to-back games. That doesn't make any sense. But like I talked with Sarah McClellan about on Thursday's podcast, kind of how these goalies fare down the stretch, and maybe even in these two games could factor into who gets that Game 1 nod against St. Louis early next week. So watch for that as you are watching the Wild and Colorado play tonight. Let's finish with the cooler. Yeah, the team that's got a 7-game winning streak is relegated to the end of the show. That's how much else is going on in this market right now. Twins, 7 in a row in all phases of their game, just rolling right now. It's been pretty impressive to watch them put together this streak. Sometimes it's pitching, sometimes it's hitting. Yesterday it was both as they win 7-1. Bailey Ober ran into some rough spots, only pitched 3 2/3 innings, but ended up only giving up the 1 run. He gave up a lot of base runners, gave up 8 base runners in just 3 2/3 innings, but was bailed out by some good defense, some good bullpen work by Cody Stashak, Tyler Duffy, and then Griffin Jacks giving them 3 shutout innings to finish it off, saving the rest of the bullpen, things like that. And getting some guys going who maybe weren't going before. Carlos Correa, 3 hits, 3 RBIs in this game, including a double. Good to see him start to go a little bit more. Gio Urshela has kind of been their most consistent hitter for average all season. He had 3 hits in the game. Trevor Larnach had a couple hits. So it's just kind of this all-around effort right now from this team, especially after that 4-8 start that we talked about. And so, all of a sudden, I again, we've talked about this almost on every show, but I just did not think they were very good. And then they came into the season and started 4-8. I was like, this team is, this team's headed for trouble. This team's just headed for, started to lose a little bit of faith. And now all of a sudden, they got a little bit well against the AL Central, and now we'll see where they go from here. Now they got to go play 3 at Tampa Bay, 4 at Baltimore, then Oakland, Houston. They don't get to play their own division again until Cleveland on May 13th. So we'll see how they fare outside the division now instead of inside the division. But right now they are cooking, and I could not have been more wrong at the 4-8 point of this season. That will do it for today. Thanks for joining me here on Daily Delivery. toying with the idea of a weekend bonus episode just because there's so much going on. We got rounds 2 and 3 from the Vikings draft tonight. Got the Wolves in Game 6. We're going to find out if the Wild has home ice or not tonight. Twins playing again, the 7-game winning streak on the line. I mean, this is just an embarrassment of riches right now in terms of sports, in terms of things to keep track of. It's just it's an unbelievable thing right now, and it's been a lot of fun. Even we got Minnesota United this weekend too, although I think if I did a bonus episode, it might be after tonight, and we wouldn't get that result in there too. So we will see. We'll see. Maybe I'll drop another one if things go a certain way tonight, but for sure be back Monday with Patrick Royce. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you again soon.